The Socio Economic Rights Institute has now moved to offer legal assistance to students arrested during those protests. In a statement, the institute says it's alarmed at the gratuitous use of force by SAPS members in trying to dispel that protest that led to the death of at least one man. And, it's a show of a disturbing trend of the use of unlawful force in our country. That's the view held by many. Executive Director Nomzamo Zondo is part of this institute and joins us now live via our video link. She's in Johannesburg. Nomzamo, thanks for your time, and it's great to have you on the program. So what spurred you into taking this action on?
Good morning, Ayanda. So SERI is part of the Right to Protest group, a number of organizations that came together to provide legal representation to students post-ISWA's fall after 2016. And we were approached by that group to look into this case. But disturbingly for us, this happened right in front of our eyes. This happened a street away from our office, where I am even this morning. And we saw the police use force against a peaceful protest. To us, it was clear the police have lost their main duty during the protest, which is to facilitate the protest and to keep the peace. More interestingly for us is that the police standing orders are quite clear on this. So we're still, of course, we know that it's a problem of institutional culture, starting from the very leadership of the police down to the members on the ground. But what happened yesterday, not only what happened before the gentleman died, but what happened after is still disturbing.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a bit more, what happens after. From what you know, what treatment do the students receive after being arrested?
Look, so after they were arrested, they were sent to the police station. We spent a few hours trying to make sure they were processed. That took, I think, probably, they were arrested at 10 o'clock. They were at the station by 11, and they were only processed around 4, finally, and could actually apply for bail. By then, 2 more students have been arrested, so that's why there's 4 and then 6. So 4 students are arrested in the morning at 10 o'clock. Then another 2 were arrested in the afternoon. But fortunately, all of them were released, as you mentioned earlier.
What are the common charges brought forward to these students from what you can see now?
So from what we know, all of them are charged with public violence. And then one student is also charged with malicious injury to property. The concern that we have is that these charges of public violence are simply charges of having participated in the protest. That's a confusion that is sometimes, of course, almost always found by the police, who always assume that if you are protesting, then you are committing public violence. And at times we see it also in the prosecution and in the magistrates who mostly deal with these matters. What's concerning for us, the fact that the police arrived at the scene, the protest was peaceful. All that happened, a road had been blockaded. In fact, I think one of the first videos that appeared on Twitter was the arrest of one of the students who asked, "Why am I being arrested?" And they said, "We're arresting you for blockading a road." And there was even at that time force being used against him. And what happened later is that more students, people were shot, more students got arrested. And in all of this, we have not heard what has happened to all of the police officers who discharged their firearms yesterday. We have not heard what has happened to the police officers who were in the nyala that is seen in the video footage that must be responsible for the death of the man who died yesterday. We have not heard from the police ministry or from the national commissioner what they intend to do about the policemen who were involved in yesterday's operation. As I said, for me, what was most concerning is the fact that after the man's death at 11 o'clock, the police were still on the ground, and in the afternoon, the police were still firing rubber bullets at students. And no one in the command of the police, both in the operation, provincially or nationally, had the mind to remember what happened in Marikana, and to remember that Fala had said that once you knew that you had lost control, the only thing to do is to retreat. And no one can tell us today why they did not retreat. After someone had died, after they could not answer why there was widespread unlawful use of force across Braamfontein against protesters, firstly, and then secondly against people who were in the vicinity. No one has accounted to the nation about why that was that. And the reason I say it's a problem, Ayanda, it's not because I'm a believer in the Constitution, but it's because within the police's own standing orders, they have Standing Order 262, which was taken out in 2004, which tells the police, in this situation, your first attempt is you must preserve the peace. You must not appear as aggressive to the protesters you must try and create a conducive environment for negotiation. The standing order says there must be ongoing negotiation between the police and the protesters. Establish who the leadership is. Speak to all the stakeholders.
Right.
Engage them in trying to resolve this. And we don't see that. But then most importantly, once force was used, there isn't even the attempt to discontinue force. As I've said, there's force from after 10 o'clock up until 11. Someone dies. But still at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're hearing reports of the use of force by the police, despite the existence of Standing Order 262.
It almost feels like there was amnesia, right, at that time. If you hadn't picked up on what happened in the early parts of the day and you caught up in the afternoon, you'd think nothing happened, considering the fact that, at least on the face of it, police didn't appear to change their approach, to change their strategy. But I want to hone in on one point you've just made, and that's the distinction between being part of a protest and actually being found guilty of something like public violence. It's an important distinction to make, because a lot of what we've actually seen are police just arresting anyone they can find when scuffles break out. Surely that's not how things should be playing out.
Definitely, as I was explaining, the role of the police is to facilitate the protest, right? So in a situation like this, where people are blockading a road, the police must negotiate to ensure, one, either they can divert traffic through another route or negotiate with the protesters to make sure that some of the traffic is able to pass through. There shouldn't be any arrests. But if there are arrests because there's been a criminal offense, which is not just simply protesting, what is expected of the police is for that to happen against people who committed offenses. And in this case, that's not what happened. It's those who couldn't run fast enough. This is what the students told us. They were like, we were arrested because we couldn't run fast enough, or we couldn't run into an open shop. And because we were found running from the police who were dispersing us. So we dispersed after being dispersed, and we were then arrested.
The real fear, of course, is that some of these moments could be very much life-changing for some of the students involved. I'm thinking of Bonginkosi Kanyile, who, if memory serves me well, spent about 6 months in prison because of his involvement in the Fees Must Fall protest. Is that something that you're worried about could emanate from the developments we've seen over the past couple of hours?
Look, the reason SERI has provided criminal representation to protesters since our establishment in 2010 is because we believe that people who protest shouldn't then have to deal with those consequences. At least, one, they must be provided with effective legal representation. They must be removed or released from detention. And our hope is that not only will the police understand that there's no case against the students that have been arrested, but also the prosecution would look at what is alleged by the police and what the law is and understand that these students were merely exercising their constitutionally guaranteed right to protest.
Let's walk through a likely scenario then, Nomzamo. If I am a protester today who finds themselves in the back of a police vehicle, A, how do I reach out to get your assistance? And B, what should I be thinking about insofar as my rights are concerned in that moment?
Sure. So the first thing that we're advising protesters is that what you should do if you are going out to protest is have proof of your address, have your identity document on you first, because you are not released from detention if you're not able to provide those two things, proof of your identification and proof of where you stay. Two, we have the right to protest group's number, but also, at least at this university, the university has a legal support team that is actually providing information both to the right to protest working group and in contact with a number of private law firms and advocates who are providing legal representation. So if you are able, at the very least, to communicate to someone that you've been arrested, communicate your name. And then also the one thing that we find is that people don't know people's phone numbers just by heart, which needs to happen because once you get to a police station, your cell phone is taken away, it's switched off. You're not in a position to communicate with your family to say, I am safe, as safe as you can be in a police station. So that's another piece of advice I would give.
Important information at the very least. Nomzamo, thanks so much for making time to chat to us. Really appreciate it. Nomzamo Zondo is the Executive Director of the Socio Economic Rights Institute. Once again, thanks very much indeed.